If someone opens your deck and they just pick up these huge missing pieces, you're not even going to get a response. You're just going to get ghosted. The thing I really, truly believe you need going into this year, and it is not your pitch deck, it's not your pitch, it's none of that. Okay, it is 2026, and it is prime time for kicking off fundraising. Everybody and their brother is talking about it on LinkedIn, as it should be, because this is a really good window. This is beginning of the year. Budgets are fresh. People are figuring out how they're going to spend their money this year, what they're going to do. And everyone's kind of back and motivated and excited and paying attention. And you basically have from now until end of May, June to close your round, which is a really good, realistic time frame. Obviously, everybody wants to do it in like 2 months. And I think a lot of times that just depends on how much prep work you did in 2025 to get yourself ready. But if you did not do a lot of pre-networking and all that stuff, it could still be possible to get it done by June if you're doing the right thing. So anyway, what we're going to talk about today is the number one thing I think that you need to have in today's funding environment in order to make it happen. But before we get into that, two things. I'm going to share with you a little bit my personal goals for 2026. And then we're going to do an exercise that I think is absolutely critical for you to do as you go into, the next few months of pitching investors and putting your company out there and putting yourself out there. So lots to cover, but all really, really important stuff. Okay, real quick. My goals for 2026, I actually took the month of December off of the podcast, which totally broke my consistency streak, but what are you going to do? I had a bi-coastal company, hospitality company, and I sold the East Coast side of the business in November. So I was really busy November and December, transferring the operations over to the new company. All of that is done. I took a little bit of a break in December, just a breather. And then we went to Mexico. On the way home, I got deathly ill, the worst flu I've had in years. I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. So I pretty much spent, half the holidays in bed, which is the last thing I wanted to do. I think you guys all can relate when you're, very active person, busy, doing a million things. Being sick is the worst. So anyway, got better, and I've been planning what I want to do for 2026. And I'm coming up this spring on 2 years of doing the podcast, or April, whenever it is. I have absolutely loved doing this. I'm going to lean into it quite a bit more going into 2026, which I'm super excited about. So I'll be sharing more of that in the, coming weeks. But yeah, that's pretty much it. This year for me is all about, doing less, being less busy, being more present, as I, have been much better at over the years. I have a 9-year-old son, my husband and friends and family and exercise and all that good stuff. So I prioritize those things as much as I do business. But I just also have this calling to help more people. I don't know what it is, where I'm at in my life, but it's really what I want to do. So that's my focus for 2026, is just staying in the right place personally with family and exercise and friends and hobbies and all that good stuff. And then helping more people. So anyway, I'm excited for the year ahead. I think it's going to be a good one. Let's get into this exercise that I want to do, because people keep sending me pitch decks and they ask for my advice and feedback. And some of the most basic things that I talk about a lot on the podcast still don't get implemented. And I just don't understand why. I mean, I do and I don't. So at a certain point, yes, you don't know any better. You're doing this for the first time. We all have to learn this by doing. You don't go to school for this type of thing. So, at a certain point, it's acceptable to just be doing it wrong or not realize what you're doing isn't being received well. But with all the content out there, people still, and myself having done tons and tons of episodes on this, or I feel like I have, and I guess I'll do more this year. People are still sending me pitch decks with paragraphs of info. So I literally open it on my phone to look at it. I give it like 30 seconds. And if I have to get out a magnifying glass or like screenshot it and blow it up to read what's on there, forget it. I'm not even doing it. It just is ridiculous. So that made me think about doing, having you guys sit down and do this exercise, because I think it could be really powerful. So what I want you to do is you are going to put yourself in the investor's shoes. So I want you to find a quiet space, get your pitch deck out, and put yourself in an investor's shoes. Let's say you have $100,000 this year that you want to invest in a company, right? You've got all your more conservative investments, you've got your real estate stocks, whatever, but you have some extra cash that you're excited to either support an entrepreneur, try to find a great opportunity that, you don't need a return quickly, but you're willing to take a bigger risk upfront for a bigger return down the road. And so let's just say you have $100,000 to do that. Okay. I want you to sit with that and look at your deck. So first thing, open your deck on your computer and stand 8 to 10 feet back. If you can't read the writing on your computer, you have way too much information and your fonts are too small. Again, go back. I've got episodes on this, but you have got to make your deck concise. And this is going to carry through the entire investor pitching fundraising process. Your Q&A, you have to be concise. You can't be going down a rabbit hole and babbling on for, 10 minutes on one response just to finally arrive at the answer 10 minutes later. I've seen this happen so many times. You need to be concise. You need to really learn that being concise is the key to getting this done. In your follow-up, people are busy. People don't have time. Literally imagine your audience is a bunch of cavemen and cavewomen. That is who you're speaking to. Or another way to look at it is fifth graders, right? So sit down, open your deck. If you still have paragraphs on there, number one thing, please, please, please change that. Can't do it. If you need help, I'm happy to help people, but you got to get rid of the paragraphs on your deck. It's just going to go nowhere. You're going to get ghosted over and over and over. And it's just an easy one to avoid. So the next thing I want you to do is sit there. You've got your 100,000, go through. Try to identify the reasons somebody would not invest in you. So for example, one of the things I started pitching investors. So if we back up to when I raised my first round, it was, I quit my job in 2007. I had no idea we were going to hit economic chaos in 2008. And I was sitting there in 2008 and had to go out and raise money. And I had to, because I had quit my job. And I started pitching investors. I put together a pitch deck and I was like, okay, this is what I do. I guess I'm not sure what I'm doing. And started pitching investors. And I realized after getting ghosted a lot that I had no credibility in what I was doing. I had no experience in the alcohol industry. I had never started a company, a business, anything before. So I had no experience as an entrepreneur, no track record. And I needed credibility. And my team was like weak sauce. I barely had a team. So I then went out and built up a highly credible team around me. And that was such a game changer for me. That made a huge, huge difference. So are there things like that in your deck, in your business where you're at right now? So again, even if you don't have sales, that was the other thing. I didn't have any sales, but I needed funding to get the licensing, to be able to, and also to be able to produce the product to get the sales. And so if you don't have sales, do you have LOIs from big, well-known customers? Or if they're not big and commonly well-known, are you clarifying why there is so much credibility in that LOI? So what are the big missing pieces in your deck, in your narrative right now that would stop you from investing in where you're at? So I really think if you can go through that exercise, put yourself in the investor's shoes, look at your deck, look at your business with a fresh set of eyes, look at where you're at right now. Another one is, are you spelling out exactly where that funding is going to get you and why you're going to be more valuable after you get that 100,000, right? So what is that 100,000? Not how are you going to spend it? Where is it going to get you? Is so important, and it's missing from so many pitch decks. So again, sit there, try to forget everything you know about your own company, about who you are. Look at it like you are the investor and try to put yourself in their shoes and try to identify, are there any missing major pieces here that are going to prevent me from even getting responses? And if so, what are those? And what can I do right now in the next 30 days to try to fill those gaps, right? So that is so important. I think if you could do that before you start, blasting your deck out to investors, because sometimes it's just, even if you have those gaps, it's framing that you know they're a gap and that you're going to then fill it with the funding. But if you just see, if someone opens your deck and they just pick up these huge missing pieces, you're not even going to get a response. You're just going to get ghosted. So I think go through that exercise. It can be really, really powerful. And it will give you a lot of insight. And I think, just understanding as you start pitching your company. The other thing is, are you using a ton of industry jargon? So where you're at right now, I'm assuming you are in the space of raising anywhere from, say, $50,000 to $500,000, right? Someone is going to invest in you because they believe in you and what you're doing. So you may have, let's again just say you have a beverage company, right? You don't have to find an investor who is in the beverage space. I had none of my investors were in the beverage space. None of my initial investors. However, they were passionate or they saw the market opportunity in what I was doing. So you can't always exactly identify who the perfect investor is going to be for you based on industry experience or that type of thing. So you need to make sure that you're framing the opportunity in a way that a fifth grader can understand it. So, don't include a bunch of industry jargon. I've looked at a few pitch decks that were like government related services that I have no idea about. And I'm like, I can't even begin to wrap my head around this because I don't know what any of those terms are that are all throughout your deck. I literally have no idea. So can a fifth grader understand what you're doing and the opportunity you have and your product and the value that you are providing out there to your customer? So that's another thing to look at. So I think if you can go through this exercise, it'll be really powerful before you start pitching investors. Make some tweaks. The other thing is, if you don't see any gaps, ask that question to other people. Say, hey, could you look at my deck and tell me if there are any major gaps that I'm missing? Ask other entrepreneurs who have, it doesn't have to be a quote unquote investor, but guess what? Everybody knows people. So go out and ask some entrepreneurs that hey, could I get your feedback on my deck? Could you help me identify if there are any gaps in my business that you think will prevent me from bringing in outside funding right now? That is a great question. People are always, most of the time, willing to help. And if you can ask that, you can get some really good insight before wasting, like 20 investor meetings to get that same information. Because investors are not going to give you the feedback. That's the worst part, is you just get ghosted. You rarely actually get the feedback. So you have no idea why they're not responding to you. You're just super frustrated and bummed that nobody got back to you. So anyway, do that exercise. I think it'll pay off. It's a great way to kick off the new year. Put yourself in the investor's shoes. Also look at your deal structure. That's another one, right? Like, what's your valuation? Would you sign up for that? That's another huge piece. So take a look at all the components and just try to really identify what are the things that would get in the way from you investing in your own company. Okay. So the last thing I want to touch on today is the thing I really, truly believe you need going into this year. And it is not your pitch deck. It's not your pitch. It's none of that. Fundraising is not easy. It is one of the hardest things you'll ever do. It is by far one of the hardest things I have ever done. And again, if we go back to, I was able to raise that $450,000 in the 2008-9 period of the Great Recession, which it feels like ages ago now, obviously. But there's all these posts out there right now on how funding has dried up. There's tons of uncertainty in the world. Who knows where we're going to be a year from now? But none of that matters. There's always funding available to the startups. Now, you might not be on the hot AI train where a few years ago it was like money was just flowing. A lot of the posts right now are funding has dried up, blah, 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 blah. You literally need to not pay attention to that. The only thing you need going into this year is sheer determination. That is the thing that is going to get you through. It's the thing that is going to keep you looking for new investors, finding the right investors, pitching them, following up, because it is a lonely, brutal process. You will be so close. You'll think you got the deal, and then it falls apart. And you just need to be determined. So I don't care what it takes, but you need to give yourself that Post-it note somewhere, that, notes app reminder on the daily of how determined you are to make this happen, because you are going to hit a lot of bumps. You're going to, ups and downs, highest of highs, lowest of lows every day. And maybe not. Maybe that won't be your experience, but I wouldn't count on it, right? So you never know. You might get lucky right out of the gate. It does happen, but it's rare. So anyway, the only thing you need going into this year to close the funding and get your company to the next level is sheer determination. And after that, you just need to be open and coachable and be able to pivot where needed, and be really honest with yourself with where you're at and how much money you're asking for and what your valuation is. So you have to check all these boxes. So if you're thinking you're valued at like $10 million and you're pre-revenue, guess what? That's a gap. You're not probably going to, unless depending on, you have some crazy technology, you're not going to get that funding. So you got to take a really hard, honest look at where you're at, where your company's at, what the gaps are, and what you need to do to try to fill those gaps. So maybe you need to raise a little bit less money to get more traction in the next 6 months so that you can go out and raise that bigger round after. So what would you do with $100,000 versus $500,000? If you are actually trying to go out and raise $1 million, would you be able to get farther with a smaller amount of money if you're really not at the point where you have enough traction or a big enough team, enough credibility, customer, LOIs, sales, revenue, whatever it is? Take an honest look at yourself and figure out what you really need to hit the next milestone. And it may take doing that, and it may take rethinking your funding strategy. So again, you might want to raise just a smaller amount and then leading up to a bigger round if you feel like there are some huge gaps. So again, a lot of it depends on where you are, but you have to be determined and you have to take a really honest look at where you're at and make sure that all your ducks are in a row. So I think if you can do that, it is so possible. I beat all the odds and got that $450,000. And this was before Shark Tank and Mark Cuban. This was me. I had, again, no experience. It was in the worst economic climate you could ask for. And and in a brutal industry, alcohol is notorious for being extremely difficult. So if I was able to do that, I know that you guys can too, but it takes determination and it takes being coachable, taking a really honest look at where you're at and making sure you are positioning yourself and your company appropriately for where you're at and the amount of funding that you're going for. So I hope that helps. If you have any questions, reach out, connect on LinkedIn. Would love it if you would leave a review on the podcast. Another goal, build up more of your reviews, 2026. And then you can always email me at hello@seedmoneypodcast.com if you want me to take a look at your deck. I'd be happy to. Okay, go get them.